My name is Walter. I'm 68 years old. I've been a widower for over a decade, and I've seen a lot in this life. But nothing prepared me for the day I found out that my own daughter used my hidden money to pay for a luxury trip. Have you ever wondered how far a child will go when he thinks you will always be there, with an open pocket and a soft heart? That's that. I also thought I knew the answer, until I saw my name involved in a $20,000 bill. I'm not a man of scandal. I like strong coffee, folded newspaper on the balcony, and silence. But there are silences that scream. And that day, Kayla's exaggerated joy on the phone sounded like one of those screams. She talked about the suite overlooking the sea, the fine dining, the helicopter ride. And I just thought, with what money? If you've ever felt that tightness in your chest of distrusting someone you love, stay here. Because in this story, I not only discovered the truth, I also showed, without raising my voice, that even the most generous father has a limit. In the end, she learned, and he learned the hard way. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know one thing. My daughter got off the plane smiling, believing that she would live the most luxurious week of her life, and ended up sitting in a roadside motel, crying in the dark with no hotel, no car, no dinner. Everything she thought was guaranteed. I dismantled it with a sequence of phone calls and a calculated silence. And the most painful thing is that she didn't realize that whoever pressed that final button, it was the same father who one day worked through the night just to pay for the pink bicycle of his 5 years. If this story touches on any of your wounds, if you've given too much, trusted too much, and been pushed aside for it, then stay here with me. Sometimes what we need most is to hear that it wasn't crazy, to feel what you felt. I don't usually ask for anything, but if I can leave a like or subscribe to the channel, it shows me that I'm not alone in this journey. I'm going to open up a part of my life that still hurts to remember, and having you with me, even if in silence, will already be a consolation. I remember to this day the way she called me that afternoon, full of excitement. "Dad, you won't believe the view from here. The suite has a huge balcony. You can see the entire sea of Key West. It looks like a scene from a movie." Her voice overflowed with an almost childlike happiness, as when she received that very expensive porcelain doll at the age of 7, and I, as always, smiled. I smiled with my mouth, but inside, something didn't add up. She continued, not even breathing between sentences. "We're going on a helicopter ride tomorrow. It goes over the reefs. They say it's the most beautiful thing in the world. And tonight we have dinner reserved in a 5-star restaurant. The chef graduated in Paris." I sat in my armchair, the one that creaks on the left side, as if leather had also learned to age with me. I took my old notebook, the same one where I write down the important dates, and started writing as if I didn't want anything. Key West, suite, helicopter, French dinner, Wednesday night. I calmly asked, "And how did you manage to afford all this, dear?" She hesitated. I felt it. It was a quick break, but enough for those who are fathers and know their daughter in detail. "Ah, Dad, you know how it is, right? Ryan received a good bonus at work, and I've been saving a little money from my job at the boutique. Ryan, that boyfriend who works 3 hours a day in a parking lot, who keeps changing jobs but always has money for a new watch. And Kayla, she can barely keep up with the rent on her own apartment without calling me for help at the end of the month." I continued to feign interest. "That's great, daughter. I'm glad you're enjoying it. You deserve to get some rest." She spoke for a few more minutes, describing details of the suite, the heated pool, the champagne reception. I wrote everything down, not because I planned to do something yet, but because my heart, that father's heart that has already forgiven things it should never have, started beating differently. I closed my eyes for a second, listening to her laugh, the same girlish laugh, only now coming out of the mouth of a woman who thought I was blind. There, in that call, something died in me. It wasn't love, but maybe it was the illusion that she still saw me as a man, and not as a walking bank account. And there's something I've learned over time. When a father starts to distrust his own child, it's because it hurt before, and the pain is wanting to come back. Allow me to pause just a moment to share this with you who are listening to me. Have you ever gone through that moment when something inside you broke in silence, without screaming, without fighting, just that weight, that emptiness in the chest? If this touched you in any way, comment below with a "I've lived it" or a "It touched me." Sometimes sharing is the only way we can keep going. Kayla thanked me for the call, said she would send me pictures of the dinner, and he hung up. I stared at my cell phone for long minutes. I knew that conversation had been a test. She wanted to see how far she could go without me noticing. I got up, went to the kitchen, made my bitter coffee, the same as every afternoon, and stood looking out the window. The sun was beating down the leaves of the oak tree in front. A light wind shook the curtain of the room, but inside me, nothing moved. At that moment I knew. It was not a doubt, it was certainty. Kayla was hiding something. And the question that kept hammering in my head as the coffee cooled in my hand was just one. How far did she have the courage to go, thinking I would never find out? What would I find if I had the courage to look? After that call, I couldn't sleep properly. I stayed all night listening to the ceiling fan spin, as if every turn of it was a question in my head. Are you going to keep playing blind, Walter? When the sun started to rise, I was already sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee and the laptop open. I took a deep breath and typed in the name of the bank. I accessed my account. I hadn't looked at anything carefully in months. I trusted Kayla. I left the card with her for emergencies. Emergency, for me, has always been hospital rent arrears. I never imagined it meant luxury vacation. The first release I saw made me gulp. American Airlines tickets for 2 people to Miami. Then the name of a hotel that I didn't even know how to pronounce properly. Oceanfront Grand Resort. $2,437. I kept scrolling the page. Convertible car rental with GPS, full insurance, sunroof. Dinner in a French restaurant. Tickets for a helicopter ride. Spa, champagne. With each line, my stomach turned. The total $20,369.82. She didn't use a little. She used it all. And with gusto. The worst thing was not the value. I was able to cover that. The worst thing was the way she did it, hidden, without asking, no shame. And the saddest thing, without fear. Because those who act like this, it's because you've already lost respect. I sat there staring at the screen, remembering the day I trusted her with that card. She had a broken car, desperate, and told me, "Dad, it's just for emergencies. I promise." And I promised to trust. Now I saw clearly her promise was just a word in the wind. Mine, I fulfilled too much. I also remembered that in recent months, several times I received notifications of purchases and I thought they were system errors. I've never been suspicious. I've always been one of those who prefer to believe until proven otherwise. Well, it was there, proven, with number, date, time, place, a cold, organized betrayal. It was not an impulse, it was a choice. And that's when I felt something change inside me. I didn't scream, I didn't cry, but a door closed, the one that maintained my innocence, the one that made me think that there were still limits. There was none. And I understood. Whoever goes over a father, over trust. One day you will learn that every step has consequences, but at that moment I didn't know how to act. I just knew that something had to be done, because if I let this go, I myself would be teaching her that father's love is synonymous with permission for abuse, and I didn't want to leave that legacy. But what to do with that hard truth, exposed there on the screen? How do you respond to this kind of slap in the face without losing your dignity? How does a father react? When do you realize that you have raised a daughter who no longer sees you as a father, but as a walking bench? I closed the laptop calmly, as if that gesture could drown out the noise inside me. I went to the living room bookshelf and pulled out the red-bound album, already worn at the edges. It was stored on the top shelf, along with others that I almost never touch. I sat in the armchair with the album on my lap, and slowly I went through the pages. The first photo that stared at me was of Kayla, still 5 years old, holding the pink bike with ribbons on the handlebars. That bike cost me 2 extra weeks of service, working from Sunday to Sunday on a construction site in Charlotte, in the middle of the summer of '98. She wanted it because she saw the neighbors, and I wanted to see that smile. The next photo was of her at 16, leaning against a new car with a red bow on the hood. I bought the car in 12 installments, with no down payment, with high interest rates. I remember failing to repair the roof of the house that month, just to be able to give that gift. She deserves it, I repeated to myself, trying to justify it. Then came graduation, private college, marketing course that she herself abandoned in the 3rd semester, almost $100,000 thrown away. But at the time, I said that the important thing was for her to try, to give her a chance. I kept turning the pages. Christmas 2007, she got a state-of-the-art notebook. Birthday 2011, a trip to California. In each image, the same pattern. She's smiling, me paying, and always alone because her mother... He left early. Since then, I wanted to be a father and mother. But perhaps without realizing it, I was more a supplier than a presence. I was a ceiling, I was a pocket, I was a foundation. And she perhaps never learned to be a wall, to be a pillar back. I got up, got another album. This time, Andrew's, my eldest son. Few photos, fewer parties, fewer gifts, more hugs, more handwritten notes. I remembered the times he said, "Dad, I don't need this, keep it to yourself." Andrew was always quieter, more restrained. He never asked for help, even when he was tight. He once gave me back a check for $1,000 that I sent him when he lost his job. He said he was going to turn around, that he didn't want to overwhelm me. Kayla, on the other hand, thought it was natural to ask, natural to charge, and the worst, I thought it was my obligation to say yes. I sat down again, felt a twinge in my chest. Not anger, in mourning. Because there, with those albums open, I realized that the injustice that I always feared inside my house was committed by my own hands. Not out of malice, but for a badly distributed love. An ill-calibrated love. I wanted to protect too much. And I protected her so much that I prevented her from growing. I fed a child inside a made woman. And now, this woman thought I owed her everything, including luxury vacations without asking. I felt ashamed. Not for her, for me. For having kept silent when I should have taught, for having given when he should have demanded, for having tried to make up for her mother's absence with gifts, when what she might need was limits. I closed the albums and looked around. The house was full of memories and so empty of truth. A photo of her at the age of 8 smiles from the living room wall. But now, that smile seemed to me like a memory of a time that no longer returns. It was there that I understood. What happened to the card was not an accident. It was a reflection of everything I missed. But there was still something I didn't know. Something I would only discover when I started looking deeper into my own statements. And what would I find there? It would change everything. That morning, after spending the night awake, I got up with a purpose. The fatigue in his eyes was still heavy, but his chest was no longer trembling as before. It was as if something inside me had hardened, the way it only hardens after we get tired of being disappointed. I went back to my laptop and this time printed all the statements, one by one. I arranged the pages on the table, like someone putting together a puzzle. I took my highlighter and highlighted it line by line. Flights, resort, luxury car, French dinner, couples massage, imported champagne, even a so-called brunch with dolphins. Each griffin was like a dry stab. It didn't bleed, but it hurt deeply. And the more I scored, the more I saw that it wasn't just an expense. It was a portrait, a mirror of the relationship my daughter has built with me in recent years, a one-way street. I gave, she drank. I trusted, she abused. And maybe, knowing that I was always silent, she thought I would never do anything. Perhaps she mistook my silence for weakness. But that day, that was the end of it. I got up, went to the office and sat down in front of the phone. I took the first sheet of the pile, the one from the hotel, and dialed the number. I was attended by a nice girl, one of those who say, "Sir," in every sentence. I was direct. "Good afternoon, my name is Walter Bennett. I would like to cancel a reservation made on my credit card. It was done without my permission." She asked for the reservation number. I did. She hesitated, asked if she could confirm the details with the guest. I said yes, but that he was not authorized to be there. She thanked her, cancelled it. Then I called the car rental company, then to the helicopter service. The pattern was repeated. I spoke little. He was polite, but firm. Not a word of hate, not a threat. I only wanted one thing, for her to feel it, not anger, do not fear. Feel what it's like to be groundless, what it's like to see everything fall apart when you think you're in control. I finished cancelling everything. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I didn't ask for a refund. I didn't question values, because the money at that point was already the least. What I wanted, she couldn't give back. Respect, trust, reciprocity. This cannot be bought, and it is easily lost. I sat there with my hands crossed over my belly, remembering the last sentence she said to me on the call. "Dad, I'm living a dream." Little did she know that the dream would turn into a nightmare even before sunset. And look, if you're here so far, listening to this old man vent, leave your like on this video and subscribe to the channel. I'm here opening my heart, telling a difficult part of my life. And there is still a lot of stuff stored that I want to share. Your presence here, even silent, already helps me more than you think. After I hung up the last phone call, the silence of the house seemed lighter. For the first time in a long time, I felt that I was doing the right thing. It was not revenge. It was justice, without shouting, without humiliating. It was just the old father saying, with deeds, enough. But what I didn't know yet is that her plane would land earlier than expected. And when she stepped out of that aircraft, the world she knew was going to start crumbling, and she would realize that silence also has teeth. The plane landed in Miami at 1:42 p.m. I know because I received the automatic notification from the card saying that the ticket purchase had been completed 2 days earlier. Their plan was perfect for those who thought the world revolved around broken promises. Kayla and Ryan landed thinking they were going to live movie days, sun, luxury, selfies, champagne for breakfast. She even posted a photo smiling in the immigration line with the caption, "Freedom smells of sea air." Little did she know what it tasted like after the salt. The first stop was the counter of the 5-star resort. She arrived smiling, hair done, new suitcase with leather label. Ryan with that walk of someone who thinks the world is easy. But when the receptionist typed in her name and frowned, everything started to go downhill. "Sorry, Mom. There is no reservation in his name. The card previously provided was declined. And here is a cancellation note made by the holder." Kayla tried to argue. He showed screenshots of the confirmation. Ryan raised his tone. But on the other side, only the system remained. And he said, no. Then it was the car. The rental company had the registration, but the transaction had been blocked. The convertible car she had booked in advance. He was now with another couple. Ryan tried to negotiate, saying that such a mistake is inadmissible. The clerk replied coldly, "It was cancelled by the cardholder, sir." At this point, there was no makeup left to hold back despair. They took an Uber to the restaurant with a French chef, trying to believe that at least a part of the trip could be saved. But there, the waiter informed him that the reservation had been cancelled by phone that morning. And worse, the table was already occupied. She left there shaking. He called once, twice, 7 times. My phone rang silently while I watered the plants in the garden. On the 8th attempt I answered. I didn't say anything. She was mute for a second. Then came the flood. "Dad, everything is going wrong. They cancelled the hotel, the car, the dinner. Was it you?" The crying was mixed with anger, as if I had destroyed a castle that she had built with effort. But what effort? Money that was not hers, card that was not hers, silence that she mistook for weakness. I took a deep breath and said, in the same voice that once taught her how to ride a bike, "Yes, I was the one who cancelled it. Everything that was done with what was not his." Silence. She didn't know what to answer. He stood there, sniffling, hoping that I might change my mind. That I apologized, but I didn't ask. I just hung up. She texted later, saying they were going to a cheap motel, that the trip was ruined, that Ryan was furious. But he did not ask for forgiveness. He only complained about the consequence. And perhaps this was the saddest point of all. Not even in the face of chaos, she understood the mistake. And it was there, on that sultry Miami night, that the mask began to fall. But she still had no idea than what else I had discovered. The next day, she called me early. The voice came soft, pasty, the kind that tries to patch up what has already become bran. "Dad, look, I wanted to explain. I never meant to fool you. It was just a misunderstanding. I was going to pay you. I swear I would." I stood silently on the other end of the line, holding the phone in one hand and the card statement in the other. She continued, "We are family, Father. It has always been like this. You have always helped me. Why is it different now?" I closed my eyes. That question echoed inside me like a hammer on an old bell. Why is it different now? Because now, Kayla, it's not about the money anymore. It's about disrespect, about the certainty with which you used what was not yours, thinking that it would have no consequence. Because now, I'm tired. "I was going to pay you," she repeated. And I thought about the times I heard that, when he broke the car and borrowed $2,000. When the rent was late and I covered the amount without question. When he spent too much on Christmas and cried saying he just wanted to make a beautiful dinner for Ryan. Every "I'll pay you" turned to dust. Each "it's just this once" has become routine. And the worst, she began to treat my kindness as if it were an obligation. While she was talking, I opened another tab on the computer. I decided to look at the statements from the previous months. One by one, I started in January. There they were, shopping at Nordstrom, designer clothes, shoes, perfumes. February, tickets to New York, 3 nights at a boutique hotel in Manhattan. March, dinners in Atlanta, Uber Black, tickets to a musical. April, a weekend in Charleston, and all on the same card. Mine. What I gave her in case of emergency, and I was there, listening to her say, "I am your daughter, Father. Everything that is yours one day will be mine." That was the sentence that hurt the most. Not because she was cruel, but because she was sincere. She believed that everything that is mine, including my patience, my dignity, my history, was already hers by right. I took a deep breath. She asked me, "Dad, are you there?" Kayla, I'm here, but I'm not the same anymore. If there's one thing I've learned from life, it's that sometimes we spend so much time trying to keep the family together. Who doesn't realize that he's falling apart on his own? And look, if you've been here listening to me so far, I ask you, stay with me until the end. Because what I found out after that, it gave me goosebumps. And it's the kind of thing that changes everything. Kayla hung up thinking she had planted doubt in me. That had made me reconsider. But what she didn't know is that connection sealed the certainty. I had all the evidence in my hands. And the next decision I made, it would be the quietest and the most definitive. Have you ever had to cut someone you love? To save what's left of yourself? I did. And that's when everything started to change. That night, sleep did not come. The house was plunged into thick silence, the kind that appears only when the soul is in disarray. I sat in the office with a forgotten cup of tea and a pad of paper. I started to write a list, as if trying to organize their own grief. Not the grief of those who lose someone to death, that I already knew, but the grief of those who lose someone in life and continues to bump into the memory every day. I wrote down her name at the top of the page, Kayla, last 10 years, and I went back in time, sheet by sheet, invoice by invoice. Private college, 3 years of tuition, material, transportation, about $120,000. Car, $22,000. Birthday trips, $4,000. Rent bailed out more than 8 times, $16,000. Credit card with invoice paid without question, $38,000. Christmas gifts, birthdays, clothes, household items, impossible to calculate accurately. I estimated $10,000. Renovations in her apartment, plumbing, painting, new heater, $9,000. Medical emergencies, consultations not covered by the plan, $5,000. Temporary help when she lost her job in 2020, $30,000. I added everything up slowly, each number one more step towards a truth that I had avoided for years. When I finished, I looked at the total with a lump in my throat, $350,500 and something dollars. I stopped. I leaned against the chair. I breathed like someone trying to keep the world in place. And do you know what hurt the most? It wasn't the money. It was never the money. It was realizing that for all this, I didn't receive a letter of thanks, a real hug, or even a, "I recognize what you do for me, Dad." Only demand. Only demand. Just that look of, "You're obliged because you're my father." The coldness with which she lied, the calmness with which he used my card, the naturalness with which he tried to reverse the blame. And it was at that moment, surrounded by numbers and memories, that a phrase crossed me like a lightning bolt. I was ground, and she never realized that she walked over me. "Will you allow me a break here? Because maybe you, on the other side, have already felt something similar. Have you ever given everything to someone expecting at least respect back, and he received only silence or ingratitude? If this touched you, comment below with a, "I understand you," or "I know how it is." Sometimes sharing a feeling is the only way to move forward. I stared at that sheet for minutes, and she seemed to scream everything I've swallowed for years, everything I accepted thinking it was love. But it was just enjoyment. At that moment, I didn't feel angry. I felt lucid. I finally understood that love without limit, it only generates abuse, that I give too much. It is also a way to get lost. And when I closed that list, I also closed a cycle inside me. But one question still throbbed, uncomfortable, in the depths of her soul. Would she do all this alone? Or was there someone behind it, encouraging, manipulating? I didn't know it yet, but the answers were closer than I imagined. The next morning, I put on my light blue shirt, the one I wear when I want to be taken seriously. I passed the coffee, arranged the paperwork inside the leather briefcase, and went to Gregory Martin's office. I've known Gregory for over 20 years. He took care of the sale of my company when I retired, helped me with my wife's inventory when she passed away, and was the one who wrote every line of my will with the care of someone who understands that life is not just inheritance. It is a legacy. When I entered, he greeted me with that measured smile of someone who knows that an old customer arriving without an appointment is never a good sign. "Walter, what happened?" Sat. I took out of my briefcase the statements, the receipts, the list I wrote at dawn. I put everything on the table in silence. He flipped through the papers, made a low throat sound, and nodded slowly. "Did she use the card for 6 months without telling you?" I confirmed with a gesture. "And this trip, with my money, $20,000, without asking me, without even imagining that I would say no." He leaned back in his chair. "I see. What do you want to do?" I took a folded paper out of my pocket. It was the copy of the trust fund I created for Kayla when she turned 21. A protective gift, $2,000 a year, invested with patience, which today amounted to exactly $200,000. The clause was clear. The money would be hers on her 30th birthday. There was less than a year left now. I want to get her out of the bottom. I want to end this agreement. Gregory looked over my glasses. Are you sure? That's definitive. I took a deep breath. Greg, I'm not acting angry. I'm acting with lucidity. The man who gave this money thinking about her future was another. He was a father full of hope. This man died last night. Today, the one who is here is a father tired of being exploited. He nodded with the weight of someone who has seen many families break up on paper. This can generate conflict. She will need to be formally notified, in writing. Are you ready? I looked at him with the firmness that only time teaches. I want her to receive the notification. I want her to read it with her own eyes, that he understands, without shouting, what is the price of the choices he has made. He then opened his laptop, started typing. What about the will? Delete. You want to exclude Kayla as a beneficiary? Yes. I want it all to go to Andrew, and if he doesn't want to, let him go to the children's hospital that my wife supported. Gregory stopped typing for a second. Walter, you know you can change your mind later. If I change, I'll come here again. But today, I want that. And I want her to know, because maybe it's the only way she learns that a father's love, it is not eternal when it becomes currency. He typed for a few more minutes. He printed the documents he asked me to sign. My hands were shaking a little, but I signed. Not with hatred, with mourning. A type of mourning that has no coffin or flowers, but that buries something inside us. I left the office with an empty briefcase and a heavy heart, but with firm steps. For the first time, I felt like I was doing the right thing. Not the easiest, not the sweetest, but the right one. But what I didn't know yet is that the notification would arrive in her hands at a time that would expose an even crueler truth. And that, behind Kayla's greed, there was another person pulling the wires. And that name I would never have imagined. 2 days later, the notification arrived in her hands, delivered by hand by a legal bearer, as required by law. I learned from Gregory's secretary that she had signed the receipt without even asking what it was about. He only tore the envelope right there, in the corridor of the building where he lives. I read it after she screamed, cried, threw the paper on the floor and kicked the wall. One of the neighbors heard her screaming my name as if I had committed a betrayal. When the phone rang that night, I already knew who it was. Answered. Her voice was full of fury, lack of control and feigned hurt. Are you crazy, Dad? How do you do that to me? Get me out of the bottom. Take me out of the will. This is cruelty. I am your daughter. You can't do that. I was silent. The same silence she gave me when she decided to use my money to travel in secret. The same silence she used to hide 6 months of billing. This is all the fault of those people who keep filling your head. Andrews, it's him, right? He has always been the darling. I'll solve it with a lawyer, you'll see. This is abuse against the elderly, did you know? I have rights. She didn't notice, but the more she talked, the more she dug the hole she had gotten herself into. Deep down, she didn't want justice. He wanted the control back. He wanted the card back. Then I heard Ryan's voice in the background, hard, dry, arrogant. This old man is crazy, Kayla. Let's put a lawsuit on it. He has no right to take you out of the will. You're his motherfucking daughter. That's when I understood. He not only knew everything, he was behind. The idea of the luxury trip, the purchases with my card, the life they were leading. It wasn't just her. It was him too. A manipulator with the face of a boyfriend who saw in me a living bank account. She went back to the line, sobbing, trying to turn the tables on her. Dad, I messed up, I know. But what you did is worse. You ended it all. You destroyed me. I took a deep breath, and I answered only with what needed to be said. No, Kayla, you were the one who ended it all. I just accepted the end. She was silent. That silence that comes when the truth cuts in, and before she could come back with more threats or rehearsed tears, I finished. Now it's too late, and I hung up. I got up from the armchair, went to the balcony. The night was calm, the breeze cold. I sat down, closed my eyes, and let the silence embrace me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty. I felt peace. And look, If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, help me carry it forward. Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. There are a lot of people going through similar things, and sometimes they just need to hear that they are not alone. But going back, the next morning, I received an unexpected call. It was Andrew, and what he told me, it made me see a part of this story that I hadn't fully understood yet, because sometimes the hole is deeper than we imagine. 2 days after that last call, when I thought that maybe silence had finally settled between us, the storm started again, but in a different way. It was my neighbor, Ted, who first commented. We were picking up the newspaper on the sidewalk when he let go, in that awkward way. "Walter, I saw some things on the internet. Your daughter is going through a difficult time, right?" I frowned. I didn't understand at the time. He pulled out his cell phone and showed it to me. It was Kayla's Instagram. In the stories, between filters with fake tears and sad songs, she said that she had been emotionally abandoned, that she lived under psychological control disguised as financial help, and that she was finally freeing herself from a toxic relationship with her father. Each sentence was a stab covered in honey. She used hashtags such as pais tóxicos, controle financeiro, filhas silenciadas. He spoke of liberation, of reconstruction, of rising from the ashes. And of course, at no time did he mention the part of the card, the trip, the 6 months of abuse. No word on the $350,000, no sign of guilt, of responsibility. Just a well-constructed and well-rehearsed victim narrative. I was silent, looking at it all, and I saw, in the comments, dozens of messages supporting. "You're strong. Proud of you. Children need to free themselves from manipulative parents." I read it all without saying a word. Not out of fear, not even out of shame, but because I realized something that perhaps you have also experienced there. Sometimes those who do evil also know how to wear the skin of the victim. Kayla wasn't just trying to hit me. She wanted control again. He couldn't do it for the conversation. He tried to attack. He didn't succeed for love. He tried for public opinion. Other friends started sending messages. A distant cousin, whom I hadn't seen in years, asked if everything was okay. A neighbor of the church said she had prayed for me because of the situation with her daughter, and I just listened, thanked, but didn't explain anything. Because if there's one thing that life has taught me, it's just that the truth doesn't scream. She waits. I continued to watch from afar. She posted old photos of us, saying that she was once a beloved daughter, but now she needed to move away. He even put a caption in black and white. "Cutting ties hurts, but it heals." I looked at those images and thought, what an irony, because the only loop cut, it was that plastic card that she treated as a lifeline. And it was at that point in the story that I understood that she wasn't alone in this. That assembled language, those hashtags, that structure, it came from someone, and everything pointed to Ryan. He was always too eloquent for those who worked in parking lots, and a flea behind the ear began to bother me. Something told me that this boy, I had more involvement in it than it seemed, and if you've been following this story so far, I'll tell you with an open heart, we haven't reached the hardest part yet. The truth itself, the one that changes everything, is yet to come. And I hope that when she comes, you'll be here to listen with me. That night, I stayed on the porch late, staring at the clear Asheville sky and wondering, why would anyone invent pain where they have only received care? But little did I know that while she was doing this digital theater, something much more serious was about to be revealed. And it wasn't going to be in a story. It was going to be on signed paper. It was on a rainy afternoon that I found the courage to face what was missing. I knew there was more hidden, more than just the trip to Florida. It wasn't just that sudden luxury. It was the way she spoke, as if she was used to it, as if it were nothing new. So I opened the laptop, logged into my internet banking, and pulled up the statements for the last 12 months. Everyone. Line by line. Month by month. I placed the computer on the living room table, sat down with a cup of coffee and a pen in my hand. It was surgical work. I read, wrote down, cross-referenced dates with old messages, and little by little the truth took shape. First came the low-key spending, dinners at restaurants I'd never met but that had fancy names, French or Italian. Then shopping at stores like Nordstrom, Bloomingdale's, Sephora, dozens of requests, aesthetic treatments in beauty clinics in Atlanta, massages, Botox, luxury salons, branded clothing, very expensive bags, and always in small amounts, distributed carefully. As if she had learned to hide, as if he knew that a big expense at once would attract attention. But dripping little by little, I might not notice. And I didn't notice. For a long time, I trusted too much. I didn't look. I thought it was too suspicious to keep watching. What father watches daughter extract, I thought, and it was exactly on this trust that she built the abuse. The final total I added up there that afternoon was over $24,000. Apart from the $20,000 of the trip, of course, not to mention the old values, which I had already forgiven without even knowing it. The list grew. I was printing page by page, organizing by date, by type of expense, by city, as if he were putting together a dossier, as if I needed to prove to myself that what I felt was not an exaggeration, it was a fact. And, in the middle of it all, I found myself stopping in front of a specific purchase, an expensive dinner, made on my birthday. While I was home alone, she spent over $1,200 at a restaurant with Ryan in New York. Not a congratulations, not a single call, but there, in the extract, was the memory. And it's curious how some memories get stuck in details like this. A restaurant name, a date, a number. Sometimes the strongest memory comes not from what was said, but from what was ignored. Allow me a pause here, because maybe you there, who are listening to me, also have a memory like that. Some date that he set, an absence that remained. If you do, share it with me in the comments. Sometimes sharing these memories hurts less. It can be something like, I went through this too, or even just an I understand. Sometimes this alone is enough to make us feel less alone. I finished that list with my soul in pieces, but my eyes open. Every line was a lie debunked. Every receipt was a broken promise. And then I understood. She didn't stumble. She built every step of this betrayal carefully, with intention. It was not an impulse, it was a choice. And it was at this point that a question never left my mind. What if it wasn't just her? What if this whole strategy had help, planning, even guidance? Because the way it was all done, I began to suspect that there was one more piece on this board. And this piece I was yet to discover. It was a cloudy Tuesday when I heard loud knocks on the door. Those beats that are not from those who come to visit, they belong to those who want to invade. I got up slowly from the seat, my knee hurting as always, and went to the entrance. When I opened the door, there they were, Kayla and Ryan. She with red eyes, a swollen face, and he with that cold, hard look which I had already learned to identify. He was not an angry man. He was a dangerous man. "Can we talk?" she said, without even saying good morning. I took a step to the side and let them both in, not out of weakness, but because I wanted them to see with their own eyes who I was now, a man who was no longer afraid of losing. They sat down in the living room. Ryan stood. He didn't even look at me properly. It was straight to the point. "You're going to reverse this. Go call your lawyer and cancel this nonsense. You can't do that to Kayla." I leaned against the wall calmly, arms crossed, and asked, "Do what exactly?" "You know, take it out of the fund, out of the will, cancel the cards. This is abuse, old man. We can sue you." He used the word us, not she. There, I was sure that he was the one pulling the threads. Kayla just followed. She tried to intervene. "Dad, I came here to talk. We went through a difficult time. I made a mistake, yes, but you're also being cruel. I am your daughter. You were my real daughter when you remembered me outside of emergencies." Ryan stepped forward. "If you don't change that, you will regret it." The phrase fell dry in the air, as a threat, not as a warning. It was then that I got up slowly, picked up the phone without saying a word, and started dialing. He backed off a bit. "What are you doing?" Kayla asked, startled. "Calling the police. If a man enters another man's house and threatens him, it has a name and consequence." "You're exaggerating," she shouted, standing up. "We just want to solve it." At that moment I heard a noise outside. It was my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who was passing by with the dog and saw the movement through the window. She stood on the sidewalk, watching from afar, discreet but attentive. "Don't raise your voice, Kayla. You're at my house, and in this house now, I'm in charge." She began to cry. She threw herself on the couch, saying that it was injustice, that I had always done everything for her, that she didn't understand why I was being so cold now. And perhaps for the first time in my life, I was able to look her in the eye and say, without trembling, because now I finally understand how hard it cost me not to be cold when I should have. Ryan mumbled something, grabbed his car key, and slammed the door out. She still stood there for a few minutes, trying to pull from her memory everything I had already done for her, as if that was enough to cancel everything she did to me. "You'll forgive me, Dad, someday. You have always forgiven me. This time, it's not about forgiveness, Kayla. It's about respect, and you lost mine." She left without saying anything else. And there, in that room where she so often sat to get gifts, to ask for help, to laugh with me, now the sound of emptiness echoed, but I knew that silence was still going to be broken, because the kind of person who threatens, it doesn't go away easily. And what would Ryan do next? It would surpass everything I had ever imagined. After the door closed and the house returned to its usual silence, I stood there, staring at the couch where she had cried minutes before. The afternoon light poured in through the window and illuminated the carpet marks left by Ryan's boots, heavy, dirty, invasive, like everything else he stood for. I sat slowly, my body tired, my soul even more so. I crossed my arms and stayed there, listening to the ticking of the old clock in the living room, the same one my wife gave me on our 25th wedding anniversary. I thought of Kayla, but not on the woman who left slamming the door. I thought of the girl with messy cornrows who was waiting for me on the stairs with the drawings made of crayons, with the crooked letters and the giant heart. I remembered the note she gave me on Father's Day, when I was about 8 years old. "Dad, you are my hero. Never abandon me." I kept this folded paper inside a book for years. I still do. And then the doubt came to me. Have I gone too far? Should I have talked more, given one last chance before going for such a tough decision? She was my daughter, and despite everything, I still remembered the smell of her hair after the shower, her hand grabbing mine when she was afraid of the dark. It's strange how our hearts have selective memory. In pain, he chooses to remember the good parts, as if trying to convince you to give in again. The truth is that for a moment, I almost gave in. I almost got up to pick up the phone, call her, tell her we could talk. But then, like an inverted film, came the other images, her voice saying, "It's all family," as if my effort was an ATM, the shopping list of lies, the stories, the public accusations, the threats, Ryan's mocking laugh in the background of the call, veiled manipulation, cruelty disguised as neediness. And then, sitting there in the dark of my living room, I understood that there is a limit, a point at which a father's love can continue to exist, but he can no longer be blind. I took a deep breath. I got up slowly, went to the closet, took the book where I kept her note as a child, open. I felt the weight of that, and then I closed it, because sometimes Love needs to know when to turn into silence. But what I didn't know that night was that while I was trying to digest all of this in silence, Ryan was preparing a new move. And this time, it wasn't just with words. Life has some very curious ways of testing one's firmness. I thought the worst was over. I thought that the silence that remained after that confrontation would be the end of the turbulence. But no. The storm still had one more thunder in store, and it came sealed in a white envelope, with my name written in cold, formal, impersonal letters. I received it in the mail, left in my box like any other mail, but the weight of that envelope, it was another. When I saw the name of the law firm in the upper left corner, I felt my stomach sink. I sat at the kitchen table, opened it carefully, and read it. Kayla was suing me. The accusation, emotional abuse, financial control, that I would have used money as a tool of manipulation over the years, that I promised help and then used these promises to humiliate, to keep her dependent. And what did she ask for? Indemnity, $250,000 for psychological damages. I read every line of that document as if reading someone else's story, because it wasn't me there. It was not the father who raised, cared for, paid for college, redeemed debts, lent a house, card, lap, time, health. He was an invented villain, a portrait distorted by heartache and convenience. I took the envelope and went straight to Gregory's office, my trusted lawyer for years. When he read it, he frowned. He was silent for a while, then said, "Walter, she is trying to invert the truth." I nodded. "I know." He pulled out my folder, the one I put together with the statements, screenshots of conversations, transfer records, dates, values. A job I did more to remind myself of everything than to accuse. But now, it was going to serve as a shield. We spent hours there, organizing the defense. Gregory said that the process was weak, that it was based more on emotional narrative than on evidence. But even so, it consumed me. Because it wasn't just a dispute over money, it was a rewriting of my history as a father. No, there are things that we live and keep. But maybe by telling, we help another heart to breathe. So, if this story is making sense in there, if it can touch someone else, like this video and subscribe. Not for me, but for this story, to reach those who need it. As I signed some papers with Gregory, he looked me in the eye and said, "She expected you to back off." That he was afraid. I took a deep breath. She forgot that when a father loses respect, he also loses his fear. I returned home that day exhausted, tired from the inside out, not because of the struggle itself, but because of its origin. I never imagined that I would have to defend myself from my own daughter. Night fell slowly, and I sat on the porch, as I always do. The same rocking chair, the same sound of crickets in the backyard, the same sky over Asheville, but he was no longer the same. And in that strange calm, in the interval between what happened and what was yet to come, a question throbbed in my mind. How far does a person go not to admit that he made a mistake? And what would she still be able to do? To win, even knowing that you have already lost. The time between receiving the lawsuit and what happened afterwards seemed like an eternity, even though it was only a few weeks. Each day I woke up earlier, as if the body was warning me that something was about to change. And it was, but it wasn't the kind of change that comes with immediate relief. It was the change that comes with the weight of everything that has been experienced. I spent these days dedicating myself to organizing every detail. Gregory helped me put together a timeline, everything with a date, proof, image. It was not revenge. It was a faithful portrait, a raw truth that I myself had to see drawn on paper to believe. It was frightening how, when you put everything like this side by side, the deposits, the gifts, the payments, the messages, the excuses, the pattern jumped out like an exposed scar. That story was no longer about a daughter who made a mistake. It was about a trajectory of manipulation that I let happen, believing that love was not saying no. During this process, I received an email from Kayla's college, dated 5 years ago, thanking her for the discharge of the course, a course she dropped out of 6 months before graduation. He never told me, neither that he had left, nor that the diploma never arrived. Then you look at all this and think, how do we raise someone like that? There was one night in the middle of all this that I stopped fiddling with the papers and just sat there with my head down, the lamp on, the house in silence. And I found myself saying out loud, was it for me that she did it, or was it in spite of me? And look, if you came here with me, listening to this story, I tell you, what comes after that was what surprised me the most. So stay a little longer, because our hearts will still turn once again. One Saturday morning, Gregory called me. His voice was different, lighter. Walter, the lawsuit was withdrawn. I was silent. She gave up. Her lawyer's team reported that it was a personal decision. There was no agreement, no negotiation, just giving up. On the same day at night, I received a message on my cell phone. It was Kayla's, a long text, no emojis, no flourishes. She said she regretted it, that he didn't know what he was doing, that she had been influenced, yes, by Ryan, but that the final decision had been hers, and that she no longer knew how to clean up what she did. She said she was temporarily living with a friend, trying to get back on her feet, that he had started working for real, for the first time in a long time, apologized. He didn't ask for money, he did not ask for a house, he didn't ask for a second chance, he only asked for forgiveness. I read that text as if holding a cracked porcelain. I recognized the form, but he no longer knew if he trusted the structure. I didn't answer, not out of pride, but because perhaps silence was the only way to preserve the little that could still remain between us. But there was still something she didn't know, something that was kept, something I had already prepared, and that would completely change the course of this story. The question was she ready to find out? I woke up early that Sunday. It was still dark when the birds started to make noise outside, and the wind shook the trees in the yard as if to call me to take a deep breath. I got up unhurriedly, put water to boil, prepared my coffee as usual. Strong, bitter, the way I learned to like it after my wife left. I sat on the porch, the hot mug in my hands and the cell phone next to me, mute, with the same message I had read 3 times. And I read it again, the 4th. Not because I expected to find something different, but because something inside me asked for silence before the answer. Those words of Kayla had a different tone, yes. They were not loaded with blackmail or empty excuses. It was a true request, or at least closer to the truth than anything she had said in recent months. And that hurt, because even when the wound no longer bleeds, it still pulsates. I got up from my chair and walked around the house slowly, as if revisiting his own steps. I passed through the hallway where I hung the old photos. She on the first day of school, she on the beach holding hands with her mother, she laughing on her older brother's lap. And I was there, always by my side, always. I walked into the office, where the papers from the process were still piled up, the envelope with the notification now archived, the lawyer's notes kept. Everything there was proof of a war that, although won, had left damage. I could answer. I could write her a message saying that you forgave her, or that she needed more time, or even ask her if she was really trying to change. But none of this would be enough, because the forgiveness that matters is not what is written. That's what we live. And at that moment, I understood that my part was not to go back, nor punish. It was freeing myself from the obligation to decide for her, because what she needed now was not my approval. It was from the path itself. She should choose the bridges she will rebuild. She should take care of the wounds she caused. I needed to take care of mine. It was then that for the first time in many years I felt a different peace. It was not happiness, but it was a firm, almost solid serenity, the certainty that I had done what needed to be done. It wasn't fate that brought me here. It was each choice. My, her, wow. And that's why that morning, with my cell phone still by my side, I just took my pen, wrote in my notebook, "Today I chose silence, not out of hurt, but for maturity." I put the notebook in the drawer, got up, and went to take care of the garden. Life, sometimes, needs to go on without answers. But she still didn't know about the last seed I had planted, and when it germinated, it would change everything. Was she ready for it? I don't know if we realize at the exact moment when peace begins to return. I don't think she arrives with fanfare nor with an announcement. She enters slowly, foot by foot, as if she doesn't want to bother. And when you least expect it, you are already living inside you. It was like that with me. Shortly after that last Sunday, I sat down with my lawyer once again and finalized what was already underway. I officially removed Kayla's name from the will, and I didn't do it out of anger. I did it with awareness, with respect for myself. I shared part of what I built with Andrew, my eldest son, a man of few words but of great value. He never asked for anything. He never demanded recognition. He was always there, discreet, present. When I told him about the decision, he didn't smile or thank me. He just put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Do what you think is fair, Dad." And that was enough. Gradually, I went back to taking care of my little joys. I subscribed to a book club that delivers books every month. I rediscovered the pleasure of stories told calmly, without urgency. I started going to the community center nearby, a simple place, but full of people like me who carry scars in their pockets and hope in their eyes. I met Donna Louise, a widow like me, who takes care of hydrangeas with the same delicacy with which she holds a cup of tea. I met Sam, a gentleman who plays the violin on Saturday mornings, just to remind me of what emotion is. And I got to know myself, in a way I hadn't known in a long time. The house, once so full of cutting silence, was filled with other sounds. The radio on in the kitchen, the phone ringing with new friends, the shy laughter coming from the balcony when someone told a good story. I didn't become another man. I'm still the Walter who loves his children. But today, I love myself too. And I understood that it is not selfish to choose one's own peace after giving everything for so long. One day, I sat in the armchair in the living room, with a book in my hands and the sun coming through the window. I closed my eyes for a moment and saw myself there, whole. For the first time in years, I slept an afternoon nap without heaviness in my chest. I slept because I wanted to, not because he was too tired of everything. And you know what's most curious? Life has a funny way of giving us back certain truths at the right time, because that same week, a letter arrived, handwritten, no sender, fragrance-free, no promises, but what was there made me get up from my chair. It was Kayla, and at the end of the letter a sentence that I never expected to read. "Dad, I found out what you did, and I need to tell you something that might change everything." Could it be that, after all, there was still one more hidden truth lurking, something I didn't see, something that was yet to come? Receiving that letter from Kayla brought me a peace that I didn't even know I was expecting. Not because she said anything miraculous. She didn't come with requests nor promises, but there was truth there. For the first time, I felt that she had touched rock bottom with her own feet and decided to climb without asking me to pull the rope. She said that she had started working with a friend who opened a small coffee shop, that she was living in a rented room and paying her own bills. And, at the end of the letter, he wrote something that still echoes in me. "You let me fall, but that's what got me up." Today she follows her path. I don't know how far it will go, nor if it will look back. But if you look, I'll be here, not waiting, but cheering. Ryan disappeared from her life shortly after the confusion. The process came to nothing, and it seems that when the money dried up, his interest evaporated with it. Andrew, my son with a firm soul, started to visit me on Sundays. Brings lemon cake from the bakery, sometimes helps me fix things around the house. We don't talk much about everything that happened, and maybe we don't even need to. What had to be said was lived. And today I'm fine. More than that, I'm light. I found myself again in a simple rhythm, with people who want nothing more than presence and truth. I've been going to the community center every week. I've even started teaching a reading group to gentlemen who, like me, still want to learn. I look back, yes, but not with pain, with respect, because each stumble brought me to this firm ground that I walk on now. And you know, if there's one thing that life has taught me, it's that real love isn't proven with your pocket, it's proven with time. I learned that forgiveness does not mean forgetting, and that not responding is also an answer. Sometimes healing doesn't come from going back, but from moving forward with more truth. Time does not erase the scars, but transforms them into a map. And I decided to follow my map more calmly. If you've listened to me this far, know that it was a valuable companion. Telling this story was not easy, but perhaps it will help someone on the other side who also feels lost or hurt inside their own home. So, if this story touched your heart, leave a like there. For me, it's like a silent hug, and if you want to come back to hear other stories of mine, subscribe to the channel. Here the coffee is always hot, and the chair on the balcony is waiting for you. Tell me in the comments where you're listening to me. I like to imagine how far my voice is going, and it activates the bell, see? That way you don't lose when the coffee is brewed again. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story.